Commander Chakotay informs me there's a new holonovel. It's become quite popular among the crew.
It's been accessed 47 times by 33 different crew members.
I don't suppose anyone here is familiar with what we're talking about.
Actually, Captain, I'm the one who found it on the auxiliary database.
I've been running it too.
Anybody else?
Well, I just returned from the Delta Quadrant and sat down and decided I should read a book. And, I wanted to read a book about somebody who's also had an experience in the Delta Quadrant, and that is Captain Kathryn Janeway. So welcome, everyone, to Positively Trek. I'm Bruce Gibson, and with me, as he always is when we read books, especially, is Dan Gunther. How you doing?
Not too bad. Have you read about this Tuvok guy? I feel like there's more to this story. This is weird. I don't know.
It's a weird thing, and I think even Janeway's still struggling with that.
Yeah. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Janeway wrote an autobiography. But it's weird, because when you say autobiography, doesn't that mean that it's the person who's in the book wrote the book, right?
Yep, that's...
so Janeway wrote the book.
Absolutely, yeah, written by...
It's her autobiography.
Yep, Kathryn Janeway. Admiral at Starfleet has written this book. Yep. Then
why do we have Una McCormack on the show?
Well, her fantastic editing skills, of course. She's edited this, right?
That's true.
That's right.
Hi, Una. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. The reason you have me on is that I'll just talk to anyone.
We tried to reach out to the Admiral, but I guess her schedule's full. Something about negotiations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And she's very busy, very famous. So, you'll just have to make do with the help.
Well, we're so glad to have you on the show. We've been waiting for this book for a while. We heard about it, I don't know, a year or so ago, and the date seemed to move a couple of times, I think. And but we want to get right down into it because, yes, you worked with Kathryn Janeway to write this autobiography. You helped her edit it.
I did. We had some lovely times. Yeah, I sort of transported over to her office and we drank a lot of coffee. We had a lot of laughs. There's things you'll never see on the page. So.
Ooh.
But yes, I am the editor of the autobiography of Kathryn Janeway. So and it was a fun conceit, and it was a nice way to write the book, I think, because I did sort of imagine myself sitting with her and a cup of coffee between us and laughing about things and hearing that voice. It's in first person, so it did feel like a conversation. That's a very enjoyable way to write. So yeah.
So have you ever written a book in first person before, and how was that experience?
Oh, I have written fan fiction novels in first person. So I have written novels, but not professionally published. And first person, I think, comes extremely naturally. I think I've said this a lot, but I have a very auditory imagination. I hear voices much more easily than imagine voices much more easily than I do imagine settings or description. So once I get into the rhythm or the pattern of a voice, it's really quite straightforward to write. And Janeway, as played by Kate Mulgrew, has this extremely distinctive voice, a real personality. And so once you get into the pattern and the rhythm of that, it just sort of writes itself. It did feel like I was, had the voice there. I was having a conversation with her. Garrick does that sometimes as well. Quite a lot, actually.
Well, I definitely have to say, reading this, I think I would say more so than the previous autobiographies we've had, which were also very good. But this one, I think more than any, I definitely heard the character's voice coming through. I could see Kathryn Janeway sitting and just relating this story. You really channeled her voice very well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, that's what you're aiming to do. You want to, I know people come to these books and people have they love these characters. They've grown up with them or they've watched the show again and again. We have really intense relationships with our imaginary friends. I know what I'm like with Garrick and Faramir. So you know that this is a character that's going to mean a great deal to people. So you don't want to get it wrong because you're spoiling their fun, and you don't want to spoil people's fun. You want them to have fun. So I'm glad she comes across. Good.
Is there ever a point when you're writing this because you're so into it and you're thinking that you are Kathryn Janeway? It's almost like you're an actress, like you're portraying this character, but you're doing it on the written page. And then the phone rings and you answer it, Kathryn Janeway.
Under no circumstances could I be confused with Kathryn Janeway, a courageous, outgoing person who enjoys being at great heights. There is no way, whereas I am a timid, bookish, I just don't leave the house if I can help it. In no way can I be confused with Kathryn Janeway in any way. But mimicry and playing a part is a large part of writing. I mean, having said that, it's not like acting, because actors are. I've done lots of audio drama and things, and you put words down on a page and you think, oh, that's a bit shonky, and then you turn up to the recording studio and the actor has done incredible imaginative work, and you go, wow, you're a magician. I don't know how you got that out of my quite frankly third-rate line, but I think maybe there are certain aspects of the creativity that are similar, that kind of deep immersion. I don't know how actors do it. It's the physical performance of it. I think you see their bodies shift and their voices alter, and I don't have to do anything. I just have to sit at my desk like this. So, but it is a kind of impersonation or immersion, I think, would be the closest thing. So I immersed myself with Kathryn rather than as Kathryn, I think. So that sense of us sitting down was really very strong. And what's nice with Kathryn Janeway is that I'm sitting opposite her having a conversation, whereas with Garrick, it's somebody tapping your shoulder, coming up behind you and whispering in your ear, which is a little bit more disconcerting.
Well, we've had previous autobiographies, as Dan mentioned. We had Kirk and Picard that David Goodman worked on. So how did you end up getting this assignment to do the Janeway book?
I think they wanted a woman, and I'm a woman. So they kind of came to me, and I think there's only I think of writing the novels at the moment. Obviously, lots of women have written Star Trek novels. There's me and Kirsten at the moment. Kirsten obviously has done a lot of Voyager novels, but is busy with the show. So I think that was why they came to me. This was the first woman captain, and that I don't know if you guys remember, that was a really big deal, casting a woman. The studio were coming down and looking at it. Is this going to misfire? It's incredible to think of now, really. You wouldn't give it a second thought. But that's how high the stakes were. And so I think we wanted to honour that in some way. Titan wants to honour that in some way. So they wanted a woman. And I am one. I'm one that writes Star Trek. So, several boxes ticked. So I think that's largely. Also, I'm okay. I'm not a bad writer. So I think they thought, I could probably, she won't be rubbish. So I think that was the reason. Because I don't think I've written any Voyager before. It's all been Deep Space Nine and Next Gen, which are really my, the shows I've kind of written for. Disco and Picard as well, but Deep Space Nine chiefly. So my first foray into Voyager, yeah.
So going back to something you said about Kathryn Janeway, and I really want to drill down on this, because I think you're right. I think a lot of people today forget what a big deal Kathryn Janeway was to the Star Trek universe and to television in general, even just having a woman lead captain, starship commander. It was definitely a big deal. I remember at the time Voyager was coming out, and we're before the time of social media, so you don't see the most toxic of toxic things, but you still got an inkling of that aspect of people, woman driver, all the stupid stuff that people say about women. And I think, like, I agree with you. It's very important to have a woman's voice, a strong woman who can write another strong woman in this case. So did you feel any kind of extra, I don't want to say pressure, but just motivation to really get this right, given the kind of importance of the character?
Oh, yes. And yes, definitely. Actually, I really wanted to get this right because of how hard it had been, and because of how fantastic she is. And, it's a real case of that thing of, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. And, having to do everything he does, but backwards and in high heels. You really felt Kate Mulgrew really had to go that extra mile, make it that extra brilliant. So I really did want the book to be good. Well, you want the book to be good anyway, but I really wanted it to. I wanted it to sparkle. I wanted it to feel like Janeway. I wanted it to feel celebratory of the program, of that character, of what that character has meant, of the kind of victory of that character in a way. That now we can turn on Discovery, and the first episode of Discovery is two women walking along for absolutely ages, having a chat. That's incredible. That's amazing. You can count the episodes of Deep Space Nine where that happens on one hand. You can't. Episodes of Next Gen where that happens on one hand, and yet there it is on screen. And shows like this really started that. So yes, that was important to me, to kind of draw that line between where we were and where we are now. And I think to remind people that it's not that long ago that people were having to fight these battles, and it's worth remembering that, because it's easy to forget where we were and how far we've come. I was there when the great internet battles of '99 started, this kind of thing. So yeah, it was very important. That was at the back of my mind throughout. But most of all, I wanted it to feel celebratory, because it was the anniversary, and celebrate that show and her and that character and that actor. So yeah.
Well, we're going to get into spoilers, so if anyone hasn't read the book, you may not want to listen to the rest of this. Or if you haven't read the book, you may want to listen to this, because you just might want to, and then go read the book, or whatever you want to do. It's up to you guys. So hopefully you've read the book. So I want to touch on one real quick theme here that I saw thread throughout the whole book, and that is the Wizard of Oz, of Dorothy. So tell us about that thread about there's no place like home.
Well, whenever I write, any book I write, I'm usually, at the back of my mind, I'm usually in a sort of vague conversation with another book. And this seemed ideal. That's exactly what happens to Dorothy, isn't it? She gets spirited off, flung a far distance. She can't get back by any way that she understands, but she yearns to get back. And along the way, she sort of creates a family of offbeat oddballs, and they come on the journey with her, and she discovers their qualities and their strengths and their foibles. And this seems very similar to Voyager. So this was sort of in the back of my mind. It's helpful, I think, when you're writing a book, to always have a kind of a few touchstones you can go back to and think, what's the story I'm trying to tell here? What's the kind of emotional core? And that yearning to be home, whatever home means, because that can change through your life. That was what I kept on coming back to. So Wizard of Oz is very, very, very helpful, I think. And then it gave me I think once you touch on something like that, it gives you other ideas, like making her mother a children's writer, or that sort of thing. You kind of, you then go into other things and start to explore them or expand them. So that was what I tried to do with Wizard of Oz, and put the pop-up book in. So my daughter has a beautiful pop-up book of Wizard of Oz. So get things like that in. They just start to, as soon as you've got something simple like that, I find your novel starts to populate itself with ideas and expansions and thematic variations. So that's good old Wizard of Oz helped me a great deal.
It's funny, yeah, elements like that pop-up book that you mentioned, a lot of those little small details really make this feel very real, like we're reading the writings of a real live person. Was there a particular favorite from Janeway's early life here that you incorporated that really means something deep and special to you?
My favorite bit is where she lists her childhood reading. So she and her sister list the books that they read. And I went to some trouble about this because I know that I've had many conversations with people where you're trying to come up with a sort of children's canon for American children's books. And people immediately go for things like Little House on the Prairie. And then sort of the indigenous people in the room go, do you know what? maybe not. Yeah. So I really sat and thought hard about what I wanted the future canon of those children's books to be. So I went off and researched, trying to make it as diverse as possible from books that already exist, books that I do love. So the Melendi books are in there, for example, the Elizabeth Enright ones. And then I had a lot of fun just making up some as well. what would be future classics? And hopefully it's kind of seamless. You sort of you feel that these could all be genuine childhood classics when Kathryn Janeway will be growing up. So that's a bit I'm very proud of.
So I worked quite hard to sort of come up with an American canon, children's canon that I thought would exist in this future, that everyone would have, be able to pick it up and feel that they could participate in, that it wasn't excluding them or they weren't part of it in some way. So that's a bit I'm very proud of. And it's just a paragraph or something. It's a few throwaway lines. So I don't know if anyone notices, but I care. So I put it in.
Absolutely. And it's the typical Star Trek list, right? You have a few like real world ones and then like the made up ones that come later that, make it feel in universe. So Star Trek has that long tradition of doing that.
Exactly that. So I thought I'd have my go. I've made up a lot of Cardassian literature, but I thought now I'd make up some human literature for a change.
So in her early life, how did you come up with some of the concepts besides just what was inspired from the show? You had to weave in other things like her relationship with her family, how she dealt with the death of her father, her past loves, her passion for science and Starfleet. Did you take from some of your experiences and put them into Janeway?
Oh, not at all. No, like I say, I'm completely unlike her. So it's quite interesting. There are lots and lots of little throwaway lines in the show. So as always, when you're writing a book like this, you've got Memory Alpha open. And because some lovely person has gone to the trouble of listing all this stuff for you. So you kind of look at that and then you think, well, what this is a load of facts. And I guess this comes from me doing a history degree. Is that I'd be confronted with a load of facts, and then you go, well, what's actually the lived story behind this, behind these small details, and you start to weave something around that. And what I got a sense of was, and we struggle with this actually because we worried if it was dramatically not exciting enough. I just got a sense of a very, very happy, tightly knit, secure family, which is perhaps not dramatically very exciting, but is charming in its own way. I never feel that. Kathryn struggles. Obviously, she's in a difficult situation. She's in command. She's quite lonely. But I always feel there's a sort of bedrock of certainty and confidence. And that's the kind of thing you get from really good parenting. So I sort of, I felt like her parents were very solid, and that the sadnesses came from perhaps her father being away a lot because he's a career Starfleet person, but that there would be a sort of tight knit grandparent group around that. And then I think the real tensions come from her sister being slightly better at what she does. So her sister's sort of an artist, isn't she? And is younger, but somehow always manages to steal Kathryn's thunder. And I think that's quite funny. If you take someone who's a real, in the future that we imagine, Kathryn would be a megastar, absolute megastar. And yet behind this is always a sense that her baby sister is slightly better than her at everything. I really find that very funny. So I'd sort of, and that's the tension. That kind of tight knit family. It can also be quite, pressure cooker, maybe the steam a valve needs to be let loose. So that's the kind of tensions we went for. And it's not big drama, but it matters. It matters when you're 12 or 14. So you've got to make the stakes appropriate for the age of the person, I think. And I think battles against her own perfectionism, her own competitive nature. So she storms out of a tennis match, doesn't she? And she doesn't like losing, she discovers. So, and very, very gifted people who excel can be very like that. Failure is an extremely difficult thing for them to navigate. It's almost the hardest thing for very smart kids to learn, isn't it? That they can get to the age of maybe 10, 11, 12, and nothing really has gone wrong. And then something does go wrong, and it's a devastating, it's a real shock, and it can knock really smart kids, off their course for years, actually. I saw it a lot when I taught at Cambridge for a while, and you would see it with sort of 19-year-olds coming up who had always been this kid. And then they arrived at a university where everyone else was just a tiny bit smarter. And it was a real blow. You would get a lot of depression and unhappiness. So I thought these were risks for Kathryn that I really wanted to explore. And whilst they're not exploding spaceships, I think they are quite human, because we were trying to track the story of where that woman came from. What would be the making of that woman who was commanding that vessel? And I love that kind of thing. I love nosing into people's backgrounds.
Yeah.
I love that you weren't so dramatic, like you're saying, with the family, because as I was reading it, I kept thinking, okay, what's going to happen? There's going to be something with this family, something wrong, something devastating. I don't know. And I just kept waiting for it. And it just seemed like she had real solid ground with this family, that she had the support and the love there. And I really enjoyed that, because I do feel like so many times I read stories and there's always something wrong. In this case, there really wasn't. I mean, it's not perfect, but it was a solid foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And the blow comes when her father dies,
right.
Which is and that's the big kind of blow I'm talking about. And she's in her early 20s. She's at the academy, isn't she? A little bit later. And that's devastating. That absolutely knocks her. She folds in, because there hasn't been an emotional blow like that. And the older you get, I think you don't want it to happen too young, because that's devastating in its own way. But I think the older you get, the harder it is to navigate things like that. So it comes at a bad age for her, I think. A little bit older, you're a little bit, you've got a little bit more sense of the kind of ebb and flow of life. But that kind of age, it's a massive shock to her. And he's quite young, and she's his favourite. Yeah, the way the family dynamic works is sort of, she's his favourite, Phoebe's the mother's favourite. So it kind of tilts the family balance. And if that's your bedrock, then that's a big shake. Isn't it amazing that we're talking about a science fiction book? We're talking about all the this could be a sort of kitchen sink drama or a soap or something. I love doing this.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, no.
There are also spaceships, listeners.
And we'll definitely get there for sure. I do love these formative events for her as well, though. Like, I'm so glad you brought up her storming out of the tennis match, because it's so vivid, that image of her walking and then it starts pouring rain. And it's just like, I could see that being such a vivid memory in Janeway's mind as she realized this is where, I could have gone left or right. And this was one of those true crossroads. And
she's embarrassed at the way she behaves. So she behaves appallingly. So it was a much longer scene. You had every point. I wrote almost every point. My editor said, we don't need every point. We must have every point, every agonizing point we shall have. Anyway, we trimmed it back just to get to the heart, which is obviously the right decision. But yeah, she behaves really badly, which is good to see. I think she's not perfect. Janeway isn't perfect. She's very human.
Yeah, I think back to those moments in my life, and I think we all have them, where you're in the middle of about your day-to-day stuff, and you remember something really embarrassing you did like 10 years ago, and you just stop and your face gets flushed and you're like,
whole sweat of shame.
Yeah, and you remember every single moment of it. Oh.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. Then she's having to, in fictional world, she's recounting this to me over coffee. Yeah.
And I also like the way you introduced her relationship with Tuvok, that it wasn't perfect at first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a little. He calls her out, doesn't he, for a minor breach of security? Doesn't she's a bit. I could see that one of her other. I could imagine again with high flyers, and I kind of posit that she's one of these people who skips a grade and gets into the academy earlier. that you get a bit cocky. Yeah. So you've done very well. You've always been good. You've worked extra hard. You've achieved this thing. Yeah, your annoying younger sister does a little bit better, but but always been high flying, always excellent, and that can make you cocky. And I imagine a lot of what lieutenant commanders have to do on spaceships is rub the corners off cocky ensigns. Basically what you're spending. Oh, here they come. They've just in from the academy, right? It's like, I remember my mother taught primary school, and they had a teacher who taught the first years, kind of like the 4 and 5 year olds, and she's basically taking them, near feral to able to function as small humans in a sometimes non-messy way. And I imagine that's what it's like with the new ensigns. Oh, here they come. Let's turn them into functioning, because most of what you would be doing
absolutely
would be clearing up the cock-ups at the ensigns.
I could just see Tuvok looking for something in every ensign to find something that they're doing wrong and has to point it out.
And she gives it to him. And
which is funny because then the roles reverse, that he then later starts reporting to her. But they become really good friends.
With me. And she knows he's right. She's she's sort of grounded and fair-minded enough to know that he's got her. She was being cocky. She was being shoddy. She wasn't doing it right. And he calls her. She doesn't make that mistake again, and she can hate him for a while, and then realizes that it comes from a sort of it's not coming from job's worth. It comes from solidity and attention to detail and focus. And, all the sort of solid things that Vulcans bring to the table. So yeah, it's a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that scene because I didn't realize it was Tuvok at first, of course. And then when you realize it is, like, I flash back to Janeway mentions this in an episode, right? I think when Tuvok's getting promoted, that she says, the first time I met Tuvok, he gave me a dressing down in front of 3 admirals or something. And I'm like, oh, of course, that's brilliant.
Yeah. And it's a gift having those little lines, because that could happen anywhere in her career.
Absolutely.
And then you think, well, how can I slot that in, sort of honor that from the canon, but flesh it out and give it space and make it breathe. Put those people on the page in that situation, because you can see them doing it. Yeah.
And then I loved Captain Paris later. So you met Lieutenant Tuvok, huh? Or something. I can see that smirk.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, you had to bring that up, didn't you? Yeah, thanks, Captain. I got quite fond of him. Yeah, I got quite fond of Captain Paris in his own way.
And why is that?
I think I found that relationship of him and Tom really interesting to explore, because I'm quite interested in difficult father-son relationships, and it's clear that it's almost like the anti-Cisco in a way, that Owen has got these hopes pinned on Tom that Tom doesn't really want to fulfill, and Cisco does that with Jake. And Jake goes, I don't want to do that. And Cisco goes, oh, okay, all right then. I'm glad you said. I thought you did. And I think Tom never kind of gets the courage to say that. And that's why it goes wrong. And being in the Delta Quadrant, I thought it'd be interesting to play being in the Delta Quadrant absolutely being the best thing that could ever happen to Tom Paris, because it gets him away from his father.
Right. Out from under the shadow. Also,
exactly that. Lets him prove himself, show that he could do all these things, but he wants to do something else. And it's good for Owen too, because it makes him realize that it's not a Starfleet officer that he wants. It's his son, whoever that is. So I enjoyed sort of exploring that. And then it was fun to sort of have Kathryn. I thought, well, she served on the ship. She'd probably meet her captain's family and have this kind of sulky little boy.
Yeah, that she believed in.
Pop up. Yeah. So, surely she would meet the wife and meet the kids and that kind of thing. There'd be functions and things. So, and, the proper fan fiction writer's trick, isn't it? Oh, just get them in as kids. So that I really enjoyed writing about the Parises. They were interesting, I think.
And you would assume, based on the show, and of course what you wrote in the book, that Janeway has a good relationship with Owen Paris and the Parises. But then you kind of have to spice things up a little, because life is a little too easy for Kathryn Janeway serving under Captain Paris. She's now starting to serve under Captain Neil Ward. Totally different situation there. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's she gets her big promotion, and she's very excited because she thinks she's going to be working with a captain that she admires, and just as she accepts the promotion and goes on board the ship, the captain she was going to work with is medically retired, and a new guy comes in, and it's a real kind of it's just a mess, because he's come in and he's expected to be able to bring all his mates over. No, unfortunately not. Somebody has been appointed already to this plum job. And isn't it typical? It's an admiral's daughter. Yeah. So he takes against her. He's a kind of, we've all worked for people like this. You know, he's kind of got his lieutenants and his lackeys and this kind of thing. And really, really resents her connections. So, you know, admirals are just people you have hanging around the house, you know. Admirals are people that you use as climbing frames, sort of, and he resents this. So it's just misfiring from the start, it's one of those things where she starts to she's uncertain because she's in a new place. It's going wrong very quickly. She's not got her support team yet. She's not got a group of people that she knows. It'd be different if he came in on a ship she'd been on for a while. She'd have a reality check. So she doesn't have a sort of reality check of colleagues, and makes some mistakes. And then she gets some very good advice from mentors saying, well, don't let the grind you down. You know, don't let him win. You work your way through this. You've earned this position. You've got it. But now you've got to show that you can keep it. It's not yours by right. It's yours by demonstrating you can do it. So she gets good, solid advice. And then she gets to do the thing we all dream of, which is to kind of, quit.
I love that scene.
Yeah. Tell him where to stick his lousy ship. So it's all lovely. You know, we all wish we could quit that way, I think.
Absolutely. I love that you said we've all worked for that person before, because I've got here in the notes, Captain Ward felt very familiar. And I have to imagine, like, all of us have personal experiences that could channel into that story. And
I read Ask a Manager a lot. So
yes.
I think it's kind of an agglomeration of dreadful managers that I've read on there.
That's excellent. I want to jump just very briefly ahead. And so was there any temptation to bring Captain Ward back at the end of the novel after Janeway's heroically brought her crew home and that sort of thing? Because I was getting towards the end and I was like, oh, you know, Captain Ward, like, I want her to rub it in his face. But then, of course, I remembered this is her autobiography and that would be the petty thing to do. And she probably wouldn't do that. But was there ever any temptation to do that?
No, out of sight. I never even thought about out of sight, out of mind. No, he's at home sitting in his socks watching all this glory.
And I mean, that's the correct, you know,
yeah.
Don't let them live rent free in your head, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Don't let the door slam you on the way out, sort of guy. Yeah. So no. You get that, but that's lovely that you have that in your head. Her final revenge. No, she doesn't really give him a second thought. I think he does all right. You know, he's middle management. They always do all right.
Yeah, and the best revenge is that he's totally forgotten, I think. Yes, absolutely.
Exactly that, yeah.
But she's learned a lot from that experience serving for him. I mean, if anything, it seems to me that she would always think, as a captain, what should I do? And look at him as to what not to do. Exactly
that you learn as much from, and it's not quite adversity. It's not that her life is under threat or anything like that, but it's the sort of daily grind of being in a situation where it's someone you basically don't get on with, and how you have to cope and deal with that and manage that. And there must have been, there must have been people on Voyager that she basically didn't like, but there was no way past that. You just had to, you have to get the ship home. You have to get these people home. You have to be able to manage those emotions and work around them. And the buck would stop with her. But yes, she's kind of at the back of her mind, she's thinking, what did my good captains do? What kind of ship and camaraderie did they create? And what did my bad captains do? And why did it go wrong? Or why did I feel it uncongenial? Because it's quite possible that, he's writing his own autobiography about, I had this entitled young woman. She seemed to think this role was hers by right. There's probably his story as well. I mean, I think he's probably a bit of an idiot. But
that's the impression I got.
But maybe when she's off the ship, he gets the person that he always wanted, and the whole team slots together, and they're a very successful ship. You never know. I suspect not. Have you ever seen Shaun of the Dead? The
yes.
movie, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you've got them kind of shambling along in an adventure, and then you briefly intercut to another group who are extremely well organized and kind of marching along. You feel like there's another movie happening. It's a bit like that. That's Voyager. Then over here is Ward's ship kind of shambling to the pub.
Well, that would make an interesting novel. So now we get to a point now where we do get Janeway as captain of Voyager, which she got to rub in his face in a sense, in Ward's face. But now we're in the Delta Quadrant on Voyager. This has got to be an interesting time for you in writing the book, because now these are stories that have been told. And did you feel as if you wanted to write some new adventures that we hadn't seen on screen, or did you just really have to stick with what we saw on the show?
I think this is the really tricky thing to sort of negotiate with these books, because you're trying to juggle an expectation. People know Janeway from Voyager, so there will be a kind of expectation that will be covered. At the same time, you don't want it to be synopsis, because, you just watch the show.
Right.
But at the same time, you don't want to go too far off the beaten track, because people are going to go, well, I don't remember that. Why is she putting all this in? Why does she think this is more interesting than the stuff we know? So I think it's all a question of getting the balance right. Me and the editor, sort of, Kat Camacho, is absolutely fantastic. We kind of sat and went, what are the episodes that we think are absolutely crucial? Because obviously we can't cover everything. What do we think is really crucial? The way we kind of decided it was, we tried to pick episodes that sort of refracted her relationships, or the changing relationships of the people in the crew. So things that would flag up her growing relationship with B'Elanna, or her deepening relationship with Seven, or the sort of consistency that Tuvok brings to her life. Or just, having to keep an eye on Harry Kim because he's very green and he's in denial, these kinds of things. So we tried to sort of pick episodes that were going to foreground her relationships, I think, and give a sense of kind of movement through that journey. So it was a bit of a tricky mixture, and I hope we got it. Yeah,
I think it's an interesting paradox, because I feel like in universe, people buying or getting their hands on a Janeway autobiography would be like, what happened in those 7 years that she was in the Delta Quadrant on Voyager? Whereas we, as the 21st century audience, we kind of know all that. So we're more interested in the other stuff. So I imagine that presented a bit of a challenge, kind of striking that balance, because
that's interesting. Yes, that a sort of a future reader will be going, no, I want the dirt on this, that, and that. I want to know about the famous people. Yeah, that's very interesting. I hadn't thought of that, actually. Yeah, but ultimately, you are the readership, so we kind of we went for that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love what you did with the Delta Quadrant stuff, because, it isn't just a retelling of stuff, but like we get what is advertised, a look inside the mind of Kathryn Janeway. So for example, her deepening relationship with Kes, I thought was an interesting thread that I hadn't really considered when watching Voyager all that closely, but I like that that's a thread that winds its way through and becomes more meaningful through the book.
I really took to Kes. I think it's a really lovely performance. I think it's almost a shame that they didn't really find a way of making that character work, because I think it's a very tender and vulnerable performance. So I really wanted to give Kes some good space. So good. I'm glad that worked. Yeah. And
then of course, as I maybe hinted at the beginning of the episode, things like Tuvix. I was really curious because, that's a perennial internet debate that goes on. Was Janeway justified in what she did in the case of Tuvix and that sort of thing? So were there any particular challenges when it came to kind of the more controversial Janeway moments like that?
Absolutely. I mean, pretty much one of the first things we said was, what are we going to do about Tuvix?
Wow. Yeah.
And the other thing we said was, what are we going to do about Threshold?
Absolutely.
So we kind of looked at these and went, and we kind of batted it around. I think we got Dayton Ward on this one as well. So, and Dayton kind of looked at Threshold and he went, oh, for God's sake, just plead the fifth, make it classified. That solves it. That means we can't. Brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And then Kat Camacho absolutely solved Tuvix. She said, let's think of it like the trolley problem. Yeah. So it's a kind of greatest good for the greatest number. So I think it's a solution that won't satisfy some people because, they quite justifiably would say, well, this was a independent person with an independent existence. You can't just go around murdering people. But that she makes a decision to save 2 lives rather than 1, I think was the way we kind of cast it. So it's a tricky one. I think the ethics are not not cut and dried. And I think she says, this is my decision. I made it for these reasons. I understand why you might not agree. At the end of the day, I was in command. The buck stops with me. So haul me up in front of a tribunal when I get back. I think she's prepared to answer for it, which I like about Janeway, that she will make a decision and say, well, it's an imperfect world and you can take me to task if you don't like it. So yeah, so those were the 2 that we kind of picked out and went, what the heck are we going to do about these? And one we addressed and one we cheated.
Yeah, excellent. I did notice in the acknowledgements the tip of the hat to Dayton Ward for niftily dodging the warp 10 dilemma. So I was curious about that. That's awesome.
So then in this book, you, of course, are being guided by what has been established on the show, both during the mission and those little hints of things that about her past life that you were able to sprinkle into her backstory. Were there other inspirations in writing Kathryn Janeway that didn't come from the show, but maybe come from other novels or other sources or the encyclopedia or something like that, or even Mosaic, which was written by Jerry Taylor, who was the creator of Star Trek Voyager and also the showrunner?
Yeah, and Mosaic was a really tricky one because I think what we found was that if we looked at Mosaic, which I think is written during the run of the show, isn't it? So it's published while the show is on. We looked at Mosaic and we said, if we take this as Holy Writ, there isn't a book. Yeah. So what our decision was we'll take what's on screen as canon, and whatever made it from Mosaic on screen we'll take as canon. And then from that, I was kind of given free rein to write my own version of events. So I think this will be frustrating. This might be frustrating for readers who know Mosaic and are kind of going, oh, this is not familiar. This is not this. So as long as people don't come to this with an expectation that we're taking Mosaic as read, it's obviously got a very strong case to be canonical when it comes, from the creator of the show and so on. But as long as people understand that, this is a different book, it wouldn't be a book worth. It would be covering the same ground if we kept Mosaic, and what we wanted to do was do our book. So I read Mosaic and I kind of thought to see what had come from it, and I think there were a couple of things like names I took but I did very different things about sort of first boyfriends and relationships like that and that kind of thing. So I didn't feel we weren't bound by it, but we tried to respect it, and I hope we did.
Yeah, I mean, even Mosaic, even though it was written by Jerry Taylor in 1996, Voyager was still going on, and as the series progressed, it actually contradicts some of the things in Mosaic anyway.
Yeah, exactly that. So you're sort of in a tricky. You kind of go. Ultimately, we're never going to get this to align. So let's just go back to the show and tell our story. And you tell a much better story that way because you tell the story that comes from this moment and these people who are telling it. Because we're 20 odd years on now. So yeah. So Mosaic was there, but we didn't feel bound by it, I think was the main thing.
Okay, so here I just want to say this. I read Mosaic when it first came out. I revisited this Mosaic novel as the audiobook. I went back and listened to it after I read your book to compare the two. So here we go. I'm going to tell you they work together well, and this is my reason how it works.
Good.
There's some things that are very similar in her past life, and other things, like you said, love life, names of those people may be different, or certain situations played out a little differently. But in Mosaic, all those flashbacks are dreams that she was having. And I'm thinking that whatever this planet they went to visit where she was all of a sudden getting these flashbacks and dreams weren't necessarily accurate. They were just representations.
So we can get it to work even better.
Yeah, I just wanted you to know that's how I got it to work.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well done.
Nice. Bruce kind of has that role on our show of like whenever, the writers are somewhere, there's some thing that you could interpret as a continuity error. Bruce always has a really nice convoluted way to make it all
great
fit together.
unifier.
Absolutely.
Right. There's always a way to make it work.
There is actually, yeah. That usually ends up generating a story as well. So lovely.
Yeah.
I'm pleased now. Good. So in that case, listeners, they do work together.
Yes.
I think there's at least 10 Christopher L. Bennett novels that are based on a misspoken line or something. Like,
yeah. Let 1,000 fanfics blossom, as I always say.
Exactly. Absolutely. Well, one thing that we've had a few listeners mention that they wanted us to ask about, and I think I know the answer to this because the timing it doesn't really work out, but we recently had the announcement that Kathryn Janeway would be a main character on Star Trek Prodigy. I have to imagine you haven't had any kind of special insight into her role in that show or anything like that for this book.
No, not at all. No, the book was written. I was writing this book at the end of last year, so it should have been out in the summer for the Voyager anniversary. So, but obviously, global events interfered. So no, I wrote it directly after I'd finished the Picard book. So that's it's a year since I was finishing this up. So no connection with that. But there we go. Just away.
Yeah.
These things happen.
Yeah.
It's
another thing.
There's a lot of stuff out there now, and you can't get it all to line up. You just can't.
Absolutely. Well, it's yet another thing we'll be able to like creatively work in and
get Bruce onto it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. This book is really about her early life being captain of Voyager and what led to that. So anything that happens after that point would be in her next writing of her life, right?
Good point, actually. Yeah, very good point. So, Autobiography Volume 2. Yeah.
Her life isn't over, right? Yeah,
exactly that. That works for me. There we go. We sorted it.
Exactly. This is the sorting out show. So, we have more to sort out here in a moment because the last chapter of this book is their return to the Alpha Quadrant. And everybody has always said, oh, if we could only seen what happened when they got home. This last chapter addresses that. And it also differs from the novel verse continuity that we have with the Simon & Schuster books. So tell us about how you approached setting up where each character lands.
I just really, I thought what would be the, in some cases I thought, what would be the funniest thing I could do? And I love the idea that Tom just jacks it all in and becomes a house husband and a writer for soap operas.
Because of Captain Proton.
Yeah, exactly. That's what he likes doing. And I think he owns a little diner and just has a very laid back kind of, he's not a Starfleet at all at the end of the day. He really, really isn't. And it's B'Elanna who goes off and, becomes the great Starfleet captain and does all these sorts of things. Promote Harry, like, instantly.
Yes.
And he sort of becomes a really solid Starfleet guy, very happily married and all these sorts of things. So I just sort of went through them, and I kind of imagined that the Doctor would become a sort of almost like a playboy, a man about town, He'd embrace the celebrity and he'd love it, and because he'd love the attention, but it would also bring sort of attention to his cause as well. So I imagined him in shades driving a convertible and this kind of thing. I just that was really good fun. And then I think there were people who were obviously going to have more difficult time. Seven would have more difficult time. Of course, we hadn't hooked up with her Picard continuity when we were writing this. So Seven, it would obviously be more difficult. And who else? Who have I forgotten? There are lots of others.
Chakotay, yeah.
Yeah, I never found that relationship with Seven remotely plausible, I'm afraid. So I just kind of nixed that. I saw it as maybe a necessary stage in her healing or something like that. Because I personally think Janeway and Chakotay is the obvious sort of partnership from this. They completely understand each other. They're very simpatico. They seem to be attracted to each other.
I like how he travels, but yet he still finds the time on a weekly basis to still visit with her.
Yeah, and he likes her dog. Which
yes.
That's important. Very important.
Very, very important. Can I just have a shout out for absolutely my favourite thing about this book, which is the pictures in the middle, which I think are absolutely beautiful. But my very favourite one is the picture of Molly, where she's out of focus. Do you have the edition with the pictures in? So I don't know how well this will show. So she kind of.
Oh yeah, there she is.
Yeah, there she is.
Yeah.
She sort of looms up out on the page. So the dogs are very important, and Chakotay loves her dogs. So I where I wanted to lead them in the book was sort of just about to take that step, which they would never have done on the ship because the focus on the ship was getting the ship and the people home, and they've kind of delayed this. And now maybe they're going to give it a shot. So that was my feeling of where they would be at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Fingers crossed people like it. I know people are quite divided on this, so like many things on Voyager. But this is just my reading. There are lots of different versions out there. So
yeah, no, I felt this was this made a lot of sense. Like I really enjoy the Simon and Schuster post Voyager continuity. Kirsten Beyer, I think, has done an amazing job. But as far as realism goes, I felt like this really rang true. I especially liked that, like, a majority, I think it was a majority of the crew resigned from Starfleet afterwards, because this was such a singular, important event. And I could imagine, being in Starfleet afterwards, just, going about your duty would just kind of have a lack of, maybe not lackluster, but it just would be so divorced from their experience in the Delta Quadrant that people wouldn't just be able to cope with that.
And also that they've missed the Dominion War.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone else in Starfleet has come through this major experience. It will be like, I thought of it, it's like Shackleton's men sitting on that island when the boat goes down. And when they come back, World War I is underway. Yeah. And how do you, so imagine if you'd come back and World War I had happened, it's, how do you match up that disconnect? So they would be coming back from this extraordinary experience, and all the people that they know would have these sort of hollow-eyed faces of veterans of the Romulan Cardassian front, It's not going to be the same Starfleet. And you wouldn't, I don't think you'd be able, I don't actually think you'd be able to fit in very well. Because you'd be coming back going, we've had great adventures, we've had a marvelous time. Oh, it's a bit scary here, and everyone else is kind of like, oh, we've been slogging away against Jem Hadar for 4 years, So it wouldn't work. So very different. So a little bit of realism, but yeah. And then Voyager was its own thing. It would be that special moment in their lives. Also, you just might not want to be on a starship again.
Right.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, you just want to kind of be home and maybe do something different because you've been living on for 7 years.
Do you know what? Maybe you won't go into space for a bit.
Take a break at least.
Yeah. And the other thing I really wanted to do was I thought it would be interesting to have a little bit of tension over the Maquis, that some people, some of the brass are not willing to forgive. And I think I have Janeway saying, well, okay, but you're going to have to fire me because I'm not having it, not after 7 years. So she sort of puts her, and of course she's the big star of the moment. So that she absolutely calls their bluff on that. And I think it's sort of her, it's a proper good thing she does there. No, we're not trying these people. Get out of town. It's over. The key's wiped out, deal with it. Suck it up, lads.
Absolutely.
She comes good for those crew members.
I like that you mentioned the Dominion War because that was something I noticed kind of threaded through the novel, the regret that Janeway feels for, missing that and not being there when Starfleet maybe needed them, that kind of thing. And even just little hints like the incident for which she's dressed down by Tuvok, she keeps saying like that would never happen now because of the Dominion War and the increased security and that sort of thing. And I really got this impression, and I know this is such a recurring thing in literature and television and movies in this era, but it really felt like there was kind of a post 9/11 vibe to the Federation at this time.
Yeah. And that they've missed it. They've not been there. So that they sort of are coming almost back from a more innocent time. And I guess, I write a lot of DS9. So it's that timeline that I'm very sort of deeply and closely involved in. So as I'm watching Voyager and rewatching it, I'm going, well, hang on, haven't they just had the battle in the Chintoka system? Hasn't Beta Z just fallen? And they're all kind of blindly going, well, home, guys. We're not doing too well back here in the Alpha Quadrant.
Right. They want to turn around and go back.
Yeah, exactly. Hanging up with the K's on. So yeah, that was sort of my feel that they would come back to a different place. Yeah, it would be like missing 9/11, and then you've been in your hermitage or something, or they've missed something important, and they'll never get that back.
Well, I mean, I thought this was a wonderful novel. I really enjoyed it. Anybody who's a Janeway fan has to read this book.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
I really
very
did.
nerve-wracking when it's not you feel it's not your show in a way. I feel Deep Space Nine is my show, and I've watched Voyager and I know it very well and all this sort of thing. But I know for some people it's their DS9, if you see what I mean. Yeah,
right, right.
So so I didn't want to sort of I wanted people who feel that passionately about the show to feel it was a book for them as well. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this real quick: if you had to write another autobiography on a Star Trek character, who would it be besides Garrick? Because I know your answer would be Garrick.
Well, somebody's done that, so that's not.
That's true too.
That's already been done. Who would I do? I'd have to do Bashir.
Oh, that would be a good one.
That would be terrific.
Well, yeah, because all the interesting stuff about the augments and how their relationship actually did work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I had a feeling it's connected Deep Space Nine in some way.
Kira might be very interesting.
That's what I was thinking too.
I would love a Kira autobiography. A Bashir one would actually be really interesting as well, though, too, because in universe, there would be a lot of interest in, this genetically engineered person who's made it, who's gotten away with it in quote marks or whatever. But, that
also,
would be an interesting story.
I could just go full on with the Garrett Bashir slash as well. So.
Absolutely.
I'm damn well putting that down on the page.
Definitely.
So, but I think Kira would be a really good, how do you go from grubbing around for roots in the hills to, being a senior military person? That's a really interesting. I don't spend much time on Bajor in my imagination unless I'm with the Cardassians. So to explore Bajor as its own place and transitioning to being a member of the Federation, those kinds of decisions. Mm-hmm. I quite like the Bajoran politics, the early seasons. So
oh yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm quite into that. I know they kind of thought it didn't work, but that kind of stuff's my jam. So Kira would be Kira I'd do.
Yeah, the Circle trilogy I load up every once in a while and just binge that. Yeah, I love those episodes.
Yeah, proper good stuff, isn't it? Yeah. And in the back of my mind, I'm going, I wonder what Garrick's doing during all this. So, yeah. But Bajor and Cardassia are locked in that sort of relationship, aren't they? So, yeah. So Kira would be my answer.
Okay. I'm going to petition for that.
Good. Petition hard.
Well, that being said, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we enjoyed the book. And if people want to find you online, where can they find you?
Oh, well, they can find me on Twitter at Una McCormack, where I'm usually being cross about something. Usually, I don't know. It can be anything. It can be anything from an episode of Star Trek to the news to Strictly Come Dancing. But I'm usually being a bit grumpy. But in a fun way. Or people flee. And then my website is unamccormack.co.uk. So there's plenty of stuff on there. But Twitter is where people will find me. So that's the best place.
Okay. And anything new that you're working on that's coming out soon?
I have a Doctor Who book coming out very soon now in December. So there's a big Doctor Who thing going on called Time Lord Victorious. And there's loads of comic strips and audio dramas and all sorts of stuff. And there are 2 novels. The first one's already come out. Mine is the second part of this duology. It's called All Flesh is Grass, and it's out in December. It's a follow-up to my friend Steve Cole's novel, The Night, the Fool and the Dead. So some Doctor Who stuff. And then I'm working on other stuff, but I can't tell you what that is
yet. Excellent.
Okay. She's like Garrick.
Oh, God.
Secrets.
He doesn't get to visit Cardassia when it looks like this. It's only when it's in ruins he's allowed back, so one up on him.
That is true.
Has he heard me?
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. And Dan, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Kertrats. That's Kertrats, just Star Trek backwards. You can find me on youtube.com/Kertrats Productions, making videos all about Star Trek and sometimes other franchises that start with Star as well. So, yeah.
Yes. And you can find me occasionally on the Star Wars Report podcast. And this last episode I should be on. And also I'm on Twitter at Admiral_Rex. Don't tweet a whole lot, a little, but I am reading Una's grumpy tweets. Those are quite fun to enjoy. So that wraps up the show. Una, thank you again for joining us. And you know what we say at the end of every episode of Positively Trek?
Go on.
We say, stay positive.
Stay positive.
There you go.
Excellent. And follow us at Positively Trek on Twitter.